Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Baby formula. We finally have baby formula. Headlines all across today. Headlines, 78,000 pounds baby formula arrives in the U.S. Ho, thank goodness. Enough specialty infant formula for more than 500,000 baby bottles arrived in Indianapolis. Nestle baby formula shipment lands in U.S. First shipment of baby formula arrives in Indiana as part of Operation Fly Formula. First shipment of baby formula arrives from Indianapolis from Germany. Tons of them everywhere you look. That was the basic crux of things. Thank goodness other countries were bailing us out. Not once did I see, not one headline, capitalist country bailed out by socialist nation. Not once did I see that. Kind of looking for it, because that's what actually happened. But not once, because Germany, Switzerland, they're the ones where we got it from. Not once. Not once. Not once did I see the headlines, corporate America screws up again. America suffers. Not once did I see, what you would expect working class people to kind of point to. No. I saw Joe Biden. Joe Biden's fault. Lots of right-wing outrage. Lots of crazy outrage candy being spewed by our chaos merchants on the right. Because it's all Joe Biden's fault. Remember, it's all Joe Biden's fault. Now, interestingly enough, this is one of those kind of weird moments. Because if I were one of those chaos merchants, if I were one of those folks on the extreme right, one of the F channel people, one of the other countless numbers of chaos merchants out there screaming, hey, look at me. Look how crazy I can be. Look how extreme I can be. If I were one of those folks, I'd be saying things like, Trump kills babies. MAGA monster covers for baby killers. Yeah, I'd be saying stuff like that. Baby killing GOP blames Biden for formula shortage, covering their corporate malfeasance. I'd be throwing stuff like that out there. Reality is all of the push to deregulate, all of the push to consolidate, all of this deference to corporate America. That's why we're here. Nobody's saying it, though. And why are we not saying it? Why are we not coming out and going, yeah, this is what, having 4 companies that control 90% of the baby formula in this country, this is what it gets you. This is what mass consolidation gets you. And it's just not baby formula. It's most of the things that we depend on. I'm old enough to remember a time when there was actual competition in the market, where we used to break up companies for stuff like this. I still remember, Ma Bell. And we broke that up because, it was a monopoly. Wanted competition. And what did we end up going back to? Well, we know in the meat, there are 4 companies that control most of our meat supply. There are 3 or 4 companies that control most of the cereal market. There are 3 or 4 companies that control just about every market. And we're told, no, it's all Joe Biden's fault. And then you put on top of that, this mass consolidation comes with this belief that corporate America, they're going to police themselves because they're going to do what's in their best interest. And we're led to believe that their best interest is to make sure that their products don't get them sued. And that they're going to police themselves. They're going to regulate themselves. They don't need pesky government. Don't need pesky regulators around just mucking the thing up. Isn't that what we're told? Job-killing regulation. Yeah, we're told that quite often, aren't we? And yet, New York Times reports today that evidently one of the bigger reasons for this shortage is that the Abbott plant in Michigan has been shut down because of contamination. And what they're throwing out as potentially part of this is evidently a couple of kids have gotten sick, and they're pointing to this Chronobacter Sakazaki. I don't know what it is, but they should. And what the Times points out is that their words, quote, there's no comprehensive mechanism for detecting or investigating Chronobacter infections, and only one state, Minnesota, requires doctors and laboratories to report cases to authorities. So we have no way of detecting it, really. We have no way of investigating it, really, and no reporting mechanism for when it breaks out. Gee, I wonder who that could benefit. And I wonder why you wouldn't want to have a comprehensive system that sets up a mechanism for detecting, investigating, and reporting. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why we would do that. They then say, and look, this is where the New York Times loses me sometimes. Manufacturers are left to conduct tests themselves on a relatively small sample of their production, with less than 1% of the Abbott plant's total output required to be tested. Less than 1%. Are you feeling warm and fuzzy that less than 1% of the baby formula there being tested? Are you being warm and fuzzy that this is not unique to the manufacturers of baby formula? Are you feeling warm and fuzzy that our food supply is always precariously on the edge of who knows what's next? And what recalls are coming because, we don't want to overregulate. Job-killing regulations, mind you. So when these things happen, and they do, who do we then blame? Well, of course, we blame Joe Biden. Of course, that's the natural reaction, to blame the person who, is sitting at the top. And look, the president is the figurehead, literally has nothing to do with this in this moment. We just went through 4 years prior to him of deregulating, of saying, hey, corporate America, do your thing. And in this moment, their thing is make as much money as possible to grow larger and larger and larger. And I keep saying we're in a moment right now, and I'm hoping that people are here with me. I'm hoping that people are finally waking up to the reality that these huge multinational corporations, this isn't the way we should be going. Because in this case, the largest of the four went down. And predictably, what did we have? We had a shortage. Now, did the other three ramp up production as we're told? Because we're told, at least I was told in an economics class, that this is the opportunity for those other three to steal their market share. That's what a capitalist system does. That hasn't happened. Now you go, but there's facility constraints, and there's shipping constraints. There's all these constraints. This is, again, when the capitalists, the people who manage the economy, the so-called smart people who we give all the money and all the power and all the deference to, all the things that we want them to do, they're the ones who are supposed to be managing this stuff. They're supposed to know this. So when the Abbott lab went down, the other plants should have immediately begun ramping up production. The reporting should have happened. Oh, that's right. We don't have really a way of doing that. I know, job-killing regulations. So we're bailed out by socialist countries. Countries, I'm sure, that have better reporting and better data collection and better mechanisms to report illnesses. And it's interesting to me, really, just this moment, very interesting, because remember, the people who did this, the people who deregulated, are the ones who tell us how much they love the babies, or at least the ones that aren't born yet. And the formula stuff. And this is a weird moment, because I've been spending some time thinking about, what did people do before they had formula? Clearly, one of the things they did, and there's a bunch of articles on women breastfeeding, which clearly the most preferred way, naturally. But in past centuries, before we mass-produced formula, they had wet nurses, evidently, which I guess fallen out of favor in the last 100 and some years. But they figured out other ways. Interesting how we rely on corporate America. Interesting how we decide to do this. Now, again, I go back to the ACA fight again. This is another one of those moments of irony. Because you'll remember one of the things in the Affordable Care Act during the Obamacare fight was that women workers would have a place, a comfortable place, a private place to expel the breast milk for their children, a place, an area to pump, and a storage place so that they would have that life-saving resource for their children. And I keep going back to, the people who are screaming the loudest against it are the people who are screaming the loudest because there are no baby formulas on the shelves. The people who are taking pictures of baby formulas in other countries, they were the ones out there being the loudest against the ACA saying, women, we want you to be able to do what your bodies can do. And we're going to give you a safe place, a comfortable place, and a place to store this. Because those are true family values. It's amazing to me, the party of family values, how wrong they are on every single issue at every single moment. That's a struggle for me. And yet here in this moment, we're going to cheer. The military's bringing us baby formula from around the world and not point out the fact that this is a failure of our corporate system. This is a failure of conservative policy to say, no, let corporate America decide. Let them do it. Completely free of oversight, completely free of reporting or regulation. Yeah, it's worked out really well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast, subscribe, never miss a moment. New Oxfam report out says that during the pandemic, we created a new billionaire every 30 hours. Yay for us. We created a new billionaire. But over the next year, we're going to probably put another 260 million people into extreme poverty. Yay. But it's a good trade-off. At least we're going to have more billionaires, right? Jeez, crazy. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are we doing today?
We're doing okay. How about yourself?
I'm living the dream. What's on your mind? What do you got for me?
This is what I have for you. You cannot, in the 21st century, try to apply the rules from the Bronze Age, meaning, their weird evangelical so-called Christianity. And you also cannot use the rules from the Middle Ages to try and get a nation to remain evolving and moving forward. Because we're not. We're devolving. We're devolving right in front of our eyes. Things are collapsing. They're falling apart. And yet they're going, oh, well, we need to go back to the 50s. And, you just keep up with that idea. And we might be back in the Stone Age before it's all done and over with. Because any nation, any religion, any culture that refuses to evolve and move on will stagnate, then devolve, and eventually collapse. We've seen it. Anybody that has studied history has seen it. But hey, you know what? I guess that's what the GOP and the evangelicals thinks is going to make us all closer to Jesus and God. But hey, why not? Have a good evening.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. And they're in a hurry to get us there too. It's not surprising. Also, the good folks over at the Tax Justice Network, they have put out their financial secrecy index of 2022, and hooray, the U.S. is number one, and not in a good way. Evidently, we are the most worst. I guess, is that the way of putting it? We're the most secretive. We allow the most money to be hidden away from, everyone. We think about, corruption. We think about, you think Switzerland, you think the Russian oligarchs hiding their money. You think about people, tax evaders, corrupt politicians. Those folks, we're the top of that list. The big heavy five, you've got the U.S., the UK, Japan, Germany, and Italy, responsible for gutting global progress on financial secrecy by half. They say there's an estimated $10 trillion held in offshore accounts beyond the rule of law, held by wealthy individuals through these secretive arrangements. Evidently, the equivalent of what the Tax Justice Network is saying, the equivalent of 2.5 times more than the value of the U.S. dollar and euro bills and coins that are in circulation. That's a lot. And gee, imagine what we could do if you could tax that. And speaking of taxing that, crazy pastor Greg Locke evidently has decided that, before the IRS could take his exempt status away, they're going to move their church away from the 501c3 status, and evidently going to possibly start paying taxes because, truth of the matter, they're not really a church. And I've argued for a very long time, we should be making all churches pay taxes. And I have this great idea. I think non-church people should be going to church. You're paying for it. You should be going, and you should do what the right-wingers have done to educators. You should be sitting in the back of the pews, what they did to this Greg Locke, and back there recording everything they say. All of the crazy idiocy, all of the insanity that they want to pass off as religion and not politics, because they're not supposed to be politicking from the pulpit. They're supposed to be preaching the word of God and religion and decency. It's part of the reason that we give them the tax breaks, because we're supposed to make us better, not tear us down and make us worse. From what I understand, Locke was about to be, undone by the IRS, so they kind of cut and run. So I'm of this mindset, maybe we should be moving in that direction. So my atheist friends, I've got a mission for you. Get out there and start going to get some churching, and start recording what these folks are saying. Now, because understand, Alice isn't too far off. These people want to take us back to the Stone Age. These people want a very interesting, weird times. And I look at this story coming out of Lee University. It is a private Christian university in Cleveland, Tennessee. Of course, Tennessee. They are right now considering, there's a draft proposal going around, ripping the free speech rights away from students at the university when it comes to talking about or acting on or anything about their sexuality or their gender. Nothing. They have to behave, and they have to wear whatever it is that their biological sex says they are. They can't say anything on campus or even online that doesn't conform to that. Evidently not going to allow students to identify as anything other than their what I guess is on the birth certificate. I don't know if they're going to check. I got to wonder if the good folks at Lee University will have, on-campus checks. Have set up little curtains and have, turn your head and cough things. I'm not sure, maybe. But they're going to also it'll be forbidden to question any restriction that the university puts on them or any other university policy. Anybody else thinking authoritarian, fascist kind of rule? Maybe Representative Clyburn's right. Maybe we need to start getting ready for some authoritarian rule. The draft policy also declares that sex is binary. There's only two. I don't know what you're going to do with people who are born with both and all of those other things that go on. But according to this proposal, humans do not have the ability or observed right to choose a gender. And I don't know why they care. They say that no member of Lee University community may publicly identify or behave as a gender that does not correspond with his or her biological sex. And again, I don't know how they're going to know. Again, is there a test at the beginning? Also, they say no member of the Lee University community may promote or advocate in person, in writing, or online for sexual acts, behaviors, or lifestyles that are contrary to Scripture, this statement of belief, or any university policy. The policy then goes on to say that they forbid sex between unmarried heterosexuals. Uh-oh. They're talking about the rest of us. Uh-oh. That's me when I was in college. Got my attention. Uh-oh. Because they're not going to stop. Understand, this is going to go after the minority now, going to go after the weakest now, going to go after, let's bully on the one person. Until eventually they're going to come for everybody else. That's what fascists do. That's what authoritarians do. That's what's going to happen. And this is where I reach out to all of my sane folks, my sane religious friends. There are extremists in your ranks. Do something about them. Reel them in. Shout them down. Excommunicate them. Do whatever it is you do. But this kind of stuff cannot be the direction we go as a country. Because eventually, it's like I've been saying for the longest time. It's the Pastor Niemöller quote. First they came for the trade unionists, and I said nothing. I wasn't a trade unionist. And they came for the socialists. I said nothing. I wasn't a socialist. And they came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew because I wasn't a Jew. And then when they came for me, there's nobody. This is one of those moments. And this is scary times and scary stuff, because college is supposed to be that moment where you question everything. Except your sexuality. That's bad at Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee. Here's a thought. Don't go there. Stay. Run. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day the Lucas County Sheriff ordered an attack on thousands of electric Autolite strikers and unemployed league supporters, touching off the 6-day Battle of Toledo. The Toledo Autolite strike was one of 3 historic strikes of 1934 that turned the tide favorably toward industrial organizing. The Autolite Company had granted a wage increase, but reneged on promises of a first contract that included seniority rights, a closed shop, and more. Workers walked off the job in mid-April. As the strike was about to collapse, unemployed league forces, organized by A.G. Musty's American Workers' Party, joined picket lines in support. When legal wrangling failed to subdue the strike, scabs and deputized specials were amassed. And on this day, the picket lines grew to as many as 10,000. Deputies began arresting strike leaders and attacking picketers with fire hoses, tear, and vomit gas. Historian Brian Palmer describes the scene this way. Angry workers laid siege to the factory. 1,500 strikebreakers were imprisoned. The scene was one of almost medieval tumult. Windows were smashed with stones and bricks, many of them launched from giant slingshots improvised from rubber inner tubes. When every window in the factory had been smashed, one striker shouted, "Now you have your open shop." The next day, 900 Ohio National Guardsmen arrived on the scene. Women jeered the landing of the Marines, while soapboxers, many of them veterans, sporting First World War medals, offered impromptu lectures on how the troops were breaking the strike. The strikers' ranks faced a hail of Guardsmen bullets, which left 2 dead and scores wounded. The battle raged on until the end of May, when it was clear a general strike was imminent. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I never dreamed of growing up to be a political activist commentator, but here I am, and it worked out pretty well for me. I've been lucky enough to have a voice in public matters and eke out a modest living running my mouth as an independent populist agitator. Still, I have to confess to the sin of job envy. Not in the sense of being resentful, but regretful about my own inability to lift the trade of journalistic commentary to the heights attained by a small, feisty collection of unique public opinionators, political cartoonists. In framing issues and rallying people to think and act, these journalists have an unfair advantage over us mere word crafters. They can literally draw a picture to make their point. They reach masses viscerally as well as cerebrally, and visceral usually outpunches cerebral. Editorial cartooning is a profession made up largely of progressive mavericks who enter the social, political, cultural fray with an abundance of anti-establishment audacity, an eye for irony, fondness for the underdog, and an ability to laugh at absurdity, plus artistic talent. Because cartooning is an expression of the human spirit that's been irrepressible since cave drawings, generation after generation of pen and ink champions of democracy blossomed. The general public's appreciation and demand for the cartoonist's unblinking honesty and satire have never flagged, even increasing whenever the artists come under public assault by autocrats, plutocrats, screwballs, and assorted other censors. These graphic editorial artists matter. Again and again, they've roused the public to rise up and put down corporate and political scoundrels, incrementally advancing our nation's democratic possibilities. As in the natural world, though, even the most beneficial creatures can be driven to extinction. This is Jim Hightower saying, check your own local newspaper. Are your favorite cartoonists still there?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Now, you may remember a couple of months ago, the Postal Service awarded a contract to build some new vehicles to this Oshkosh Corporation. And, the thought I think a lot of people had is that they were going to be built by union workers in Wisconsin. They were going to be good, solid union wage jobs, going to support families. And immediately this company did a 180 and said, no. We're going to do the Boeing thing. We're going to head down to South Carolina where we can get cheap wages and probably a lot of subsidies, put a lot of cash in our pocket. And I said back then, well, this is the beginning of the end of those union jobs in Wisconsin. The writing has got to be on the wall. I didn't need to break out my crystal ball for that. So this week when I saw Tom Nelson's series of tweets saying, make no mistake, Oshkosh is trying to bust Local 578. They're moving UPS production to non-union South Carolina. Going, well, here, got to talk to Tom now because this is what I predicted back then. And that is why I've asked Tom Nelson to come talk with us. He is the Outgami County Executive. He's also a candidate for U.S. Senate there in Wisconsin, hopefully going to be the guy to take on Ron Johnson in November. Make sure you check out his website, nelsonforwi.com. Tom, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be back on again.
So, I hate to be right, but is this actually going to happen? Are we really looking at the possibility that those jobs could be destroyed, or are you looking into a crystal ball too?
Well, no, I mean, you don't need a crystal ball. I mean, you're exactly right, Rick. The problem we have here, though, is you don't need to look into a crystal ball, but most people, reporters, they haven't picked up on this yet. And so I kind of wish they had a crystal ball. And I've been taking this message on the campaign trail, and I've given many examples how this is not just an Oshkosh truck UAW thing, but this is a paper workers, this is auto workers, these are tractor makers, all over the place. You've seen this pattern of manufacturing that is doing all that they can to bust up these unions, but they're not doing it the old-fashioned way. They're not rolling in Pinkertons and cracking skulls and knocking out kneecaps. But what they're doing is they're making these very, very kind of covert moves. And when you add all this together, when it becomes too obvious, it's too late. So the example we have here in Oshkosh is Oshkosh Defense, which is the subsidiary of Oshkosh Truck. Oshkosh Defense is a subsidiary of Oshkosh Corp, which is formerly Oshkosh Truck. And so this contract, $10 billion contract from the United States Postal Service, was one of the backs of those union workers in Oshkosh, because that's where they would make those trucks. And sure enough, it turns out, well, we're not going to do it there. We're going to do it in South Carolina. They're like, what the heck are you talking about? South Carolina? Did you just throw a dart at the map or something? Where did this come on? And sure enough, they said, well, we don't have enough space here in Wisconsin. It's the Midwest. There's not a lot of land. And we need to go down to South Carolina where there's going to be a big enough facility. Well, it turns out that they don't have a turnkey operation as they have been suggesting or intimating as such. So they're actually making additions to this structure. They're putting in reinforced cement to be able to make this product line. So what's going on is they are trying to create a footprint, a manufacturing footprint in South Carolina, not just to take these jobs, approximately 1,000 that should be in Oshkosh. They're going to bring them to South Carolina. And what's going to happen is when the UAW contract is up in 2027 and they get a crummy contract and they're talking striking, Oshkosh is going to say, well, we can't do anything about that. So we'll have to move production for these other jobs, these other projects, all the way down to South Carolina, where in the last 4 years, they've had plenty of time to expand and make as big of a plant that they can have. So that's what's going on right now. You have that. And then you have examples like Clearwater Paper in Neenah. They shut down and they invested in their facility down south. Georgia Pacific is just closed down its very last paper mill, its very last union paper mill in Green Bay. And they moved production down the road to their non-union facility. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what you hear is like, well, we haven't been really investing in these plants. We're not investing in these plants because, we're paying the workers too much. But they are deliberately making these strategic decisions to invest in non-union facilities because they're non-union facilities. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I just gave you 3 concrete examples of what's going on. People aren't picking up. And as I said in my tweet, my prediction is, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you're wrong too, Rick, which is union manufacturing in the state of Wisconsin is going to be gone in 5 years.
But and you're not wrong, because we've seen this movie played out time and time again. This is what they do. They take our money and then they use it against us. And this is a perfect example of that. They're taking this $10 billion contract of taxpayer money, when the intent of this investment was to get the public a good that they needed, and to use that money to create good union jobs. You've now gotten this bait and switch out of this company to turn around and use it against those workers. It's a smack in the face, and it's something that I've been saying that the Biden administration has to do something about, because there's something dishonest in all of this.
Now, you might not be able to do anything about a private good that's being made at Clearwater Paper or at Georgia Pacific. Okay, that might be a little bit more difficult. But you're talking about a federal grant. You're talking about a federal project, a $10 billion federal public project. I don't understand why those jobs are not being made in Oshkosh right now. Because if I was a U.S. Senator, I would say, you know what? This is a pretty big deal. We're talking about generational jobs in Oshkosh, 1,000 union jobs. But at the same time, too, I'm seeing what is happening with these other companies and what they're doing to bust their unions. And what I would say to Oshkosh Truck is simply this. I am going to attach an amendment to a random bill, whatever it might be, that says you got to make these trucks in Oshkosh, or hold up another bill. And I don't understand why any U.S. senator can't do this. You are a U.S. senator and you have the power to do that. So do it.
Yeah,
Your job is to stand up for the people you serve. I think this is important. I think this is important enough to pull out a full stop. This is a $10 billion contract that is owed to the union workers at Oshkosh, and no one is doing anything about it. Democrats aren't doing anything about it. Republicans aren't doing anything about it because most of them have given up. They've given up because they have seen this movie too many times, and they're just, well, we tried so hard, and these are just jobs, and they're just going to go away, and we have to let them go away. Yeah, they're going away. You know why they're going away? Because we're not standing and fighting. That's why they're going away.
Maybe there'd be a senator that could do that. Maybe we could take one of them out that this November who isn't doing that. In fact, one of the senators from your state in Wisconsin, I seem to remember saying something about these jobs, that you guys have too many jobs in Wisconsin. Am I getting this right? The sitting senator said there are too many jobs in Wisconsin. I think his name is Ron Johnson.
You can't make this stuff up. But, this is the same guy that concocts these COVID conspiracies. Oh, the last thing he said was that COVID was this conspiracy that the Biden administration is using to get votes and to get rid. It's just bizarre. It really is none of the stuff adds up, and it doesn't make any sense. And I think that you're just dealing with people, and I don't know what goes on between the ears of Ron Johnson, but he just must be confused day in and day out because the words that are coming out of his mouth and what he's hearing, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. And as a result, real people are getting hurt.
Well, did he agree with somebody?
Because of a pandemic, people are losing their jobs. And of course, what's ridiculous is this is in his hometown of Oshkosh. If he can't stand up and fight for jobs in his hometown, he's not going to do it anywhere else. And indeed, he hasn't done that in the last 11 years.
Yeah, but did he just recently agree with somebody who said that something, the vaccines caused AIDS or something outrageous like that?
Oh, yeah, that's it. You want to laugh. That's your first reaction. But again, this is serious stuff. This is not coming out of some random conspiracy on some, the back page of some sort of website out of someone's parents' basement. This is a U.S. senator. This is a U.S. senator who was a chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. And he keeps saying these things. Mouthwash can kill COVID. COVID vaccines can cause AIDS. It's just, if you were someone who was saying this just off the street, this is the kind of stuff that you would expect hearing from somebody at bar close at 2:30 in the morning. It just doesn't make any sense. And this is coming from a U.S. senator. Just think about that.
It's crazy. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Tom Nelson, the Outagamie County executive. He's also running for U.S. Senate there in Wisconsin. And look, I'm hoping someone takes Ron Johnson out in the next election. And I'm hoping it's Tom. Tom's one of my favorite guys. Check out his website, Tom Nelson, or Nelson4WI.com. We'll get it out, links out on social media, how you can check that out. Also, check out his book, One Day Stronger, How One Union Local Saved a Mill and Changed an Industry, and what it means for American manufacturing. We'll get links out on social media as well on that. Now, you're one of these guys, every time there's some action going on in your backyard, you are there. And I'm looking at this CNH strike that's going on, entering its fourth week, I understand, today. The UAW just rejected the latest company proposal that was not up to snuff. This is another one of these moments where corporate America went in and said, fine, you're going to go on strike. We're going to cut off your health insurance. And which is why this is a good opportunity to talk about the Striking Workers Health Care Protection Act that's been introduced by Sherrod Brown and my Senator Bob Casey, something I think you'd be on board with, right?
Yeah, of course, but I looked at this, I looked at the bill, and going through it, because this stuff's important to me. And I guess the sanction was something like a $50,000 fine if there's a violation. Well, just make it illegal, for crying out loud. I mean, how simple can this be? You just make a law that says you can't do it. It's illegal. We're not talking about a fine here, a fine there. And see, that's another problem too, is corporate America has caught on to this. I like the bill, but it doesn't go far enough. Many more examples, war notices. So if you're going to close down a plant or a mill, you have to give a 60-day notice that you're going to lose your job. But what's happening is more and more companies are breaking the war notice, and for a couple of reasons, and the penalty is not that high. They look as a cost of doing business. Do you give the workers 60 days so you can work this thing out, or do they shut the mill down in 2 or 3 weeks so you don't have a community or a union or workers that can organize and fight the closure, which is what we did 5 years ago at the Appleton Coated Mill. If we were not given enough time, we would never have been able to do it. If it wasn't a union workforce, we would not have been able to do it. So I like the bill that they've come out with, that Sherrod's come out, and Bob Casey, but it's got to be stronger. It has to be much stronger. And look, you're talking to the guy that's talking about passing the PRO Act, repealing Taft-Hartley, cracking open, existing labor law, making sure we get rid of these racist provisions that makes it difficult for domestic workers, for agriculture workers to organize. We have to do more. We constantly have to be on offense. We can't just say $15 minimum wage. We can't just say PRO Act. We can't just say we got to get rid of bad trade deals. We need to have solid, no holds barred legislation and laws, and we got to keep pushing. I don't care if you're in the majority. I don't care if you're in the minority. I don't care if you don't have a working majority. If you are really pro-worker, this is your mission, and you do this every day that you wake up. And if I have the honor and the privilege to go to Washington to represent the great people of Wisconsin, I will commit to you right now that this will be my single solitary focus: to bring economic justice, to bring social justice to working families in Outagamie County, throughout Wisconsin, and throughout this country.
We need more people in elected office who will take that pledge. And I wish Democrats would get on board with that. Also this week, I understand there's a rally, Tract Building Systems. I guess they're on strike. Tell me what's going on there.
Yeah, so these are the SMART Local 565. It's in Sun Prairie, just outside of Madison. Here is another example. I want to bring this back to the Racine workers, the Racine UAW workers at Case New Holland. And I can also add on to that too, though. But the common link between the two is you have companies that are not adhering to safety protocols for COVID. And they have this problem. People are still getting sick of COVID. So yes, this is supposed to be an endemic, but we know that these COVID cases continue to rise. And so companies like CNH, they're not taking the appropriate steps to make sure that workers are safe. And what I do, my job as Outagamie County executive, when we start going through the pandemic, I made sure that we had three simple principles, which was protect the health and safety of our workers, protect the health and safety of the public, and make sure that we continue to provide the best possible service to the people of Outagamie County. And I've always erred on the side of caution. We've had, masking orders. We have had stay-at-home orders. We have had this major shift to work from home and work in safe, secure areas. That's not what's happening in places like Case New Holland or in Sun Prairie. And so what you have people doing, they're not on offense, that they're trying to get necessarily a 5% wage or a 10% wage to try to keep up with inflation or to make sure they have affordable health insurance. Again, we need Medicare for all. We keep dicking around with this. But they're just looking for basic workplace safety settings. I mean, some things just have not changed. So I'm going down to those folks on Wednesday. I'm rallying with them. I'm going to show my support, just as I done 3 times. I've been in the line 3 times down in Racine. And let me add too, this is a little off topic though, but this is another good example of like corporate power. So corporate power consolidation, they make tractors and farm implements. And there's this huge amount of market consolidation, especially for tractor makers. And it's so bad that they actually do not allow farmers to be able to fix their equipment. Like the tractor, craps out in the middle of a cornfield. even if they know how to restart, that they can't. They got to get like the service technician to come in. It might take this person 2 or 3 or 4 days to do it. And meanwhile, you've got this. So not only do you have this problem on the customer end, but now you're seeing production, these same companies, not only are they treating their customers poorly, they're treating their workers poorly. They are doing so well because they have a market hold, a stranglehold on the market. So they are making a lot of money by charging farmers a lot of money, and even more money because they can't repair their freaking tractors or vehicles. So this is a good example where you hear it on one end, farmers have a very legitimate gripe, and then you have the workers who are making the tractors, they're doing their job, they're doing good work, and in the middle is the man. In the middle is corporate America screwing over workers and screwing over farmers and customers.
Yeah, I thought they learned their lesson when they came out on, what was it, August 18th of 2020, I believe it was, or 2019. August 19th of 2019, when they came out with that business roundtable statement that they'd learned their lesson. They had turned over a new leaf. It was about the workers and the consumers. It wasn't about maximizing profits anymore. They learned their lesson. I guess they were wrong. But make sure you check out the website, nelsonforwi.com, nelsonforwisconsin.com. Tom Nelson, I appreciate you taking time. Keep up the great work. And I look forward to having you back again real soon.
Let's do it.
Good stuff, as always. Again, make sure you check out Tom Nelson's website, running for Senate there in Wisconsin. Boy, wouldn't it be great to have people like that in the U.S. Senate, people actually fighting for workers' rights, their ability to organize, to collectively bargain for better wages, hours, conditions. If only we could vote for someone like that. Wisconsin, you can. Your primary's coming up sometime there in August, and general election November, you can do it. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2003. That was the day that the U.S. Senate approved more than $300 billion in tax cuts over the next decade. The cuts barely passed. Vice President Dick Cheney cast the deciding vote 51-50. Starting in 2001, President George W. Bush proposed and pushed for a series of drastic tax cuts. The administration promised the changes would help to create jobs and grow the economy. But the results fell far short of that goal. 10 years after the massive tax cuts, the Washington Post ran a story analyzing their impact. The article stated, quote, "By any measure, the Bush tax cuts have benefited the wealthy more than the middle class. The top 20% of earners received 73% of the tax relief. The bottom 20% only received 1%. Coupled with spending on wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the tax cuts sent the national debt soaring. And those promised jobs, they never materialized. 2001 to 2007 marked the worst period of job growth since the 1950s. Then, in 2008, the recession wiped out 8 million jobs. Many of the Bush tax cuts were designed to sunset or expire after so many years. Yet, when it came time for the cuts to end in 2010, Republicans in Congress fought to keep them going. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka declared, "It is absolutely insane that in these tough economic times, some people want to continue George W. Bush's tax giveaways to millionaires. Working families are losing their jobs, their benefits, and their homes. They are the ones who need help." The Bush tax cuts finally expired in 2013, although new legislation repackaged and continued many of them. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So it looks like Truth Social is getting a little attention, and it needs it. Look, Truth Social needs a little attention because evidently the former guy got to re-truth something. That's so funny because he didn't retweet it; he re-truthed it, and evidently the truth that they're spewing out is that the there was a tweet by the El Salvadorian president who tweeted out that the most powerful country in the world is falling apart so fast that it makes you rethink what are the real reasons. Something so big and powerful can't be destroyed so quickly unless the enemies come from within. And so you had this former Fox news host who shared the screenshot, and it's one of these these kind of moments where you just go, what exactly is it that you're talking about? How crazy actually are you? Well, evidently the former thing puts out that, something about civil war, and the former guy retweets it or retruths it. And George Conway, the conservative attorney, he tweets out, nothing to see here, just a former president of the United States sharing on social media post advocating or predicting civil war in the United States. No biggie. Yeah, no biggie. A guy who caused an insurrection on January 6th, no biggie. And really does, I think, in a way, wants that. Because wouldn't that be the ultimate ego shot for him? Also interesting to see that Senate candidate here in Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick, has filed a lawsuit here in Pennsylvania to compel the court to count Republican mail-in ballots. This is great. Wants to count all the ballots. Huh, how interesting is that? A Republican saying we should count mail-in ballots. Weird. I'm waiting for this to turn completely crazy, kind of like 2020's Republican, positions. McCormick wants to count the ballots because, it's a virtual tie at this moment. So every ballot should be counted. Oz, not so much. Barnett's claiming everything's stolen from me. She should have won because that's the Trump move right there. Now, as we talked about on our weekend show, the reality is on Friday there was an interesting court case out of the third district court of appeals that said in a 2021 judicial race that all of the ballots, regardless of if they were stamped with a date or not, if received by the election day, would be counted. That's what this lawsuit is coming out of, because there are some unmarked ballots that now need to be counted. This is what McCormick is saying. Look, I need those ballots. The more ballots that can be counted, the better chance he's going to have. Oz, since Oz might be just a touch ahead, couple of votes, doesn't want any more ballots to be counted. Interesting to watch the gamesmanship, but still very interesting to watch Republicans say, oh, we want to count the ballots. The ballots that we've always been against. Such fun. And I still say, and I still stand by my position that Trump should have endorsed the black woman, because she is so much more Trumpian than the two guys. I think his endorsement could have moved her to victory. I think because she was the Trumpiest of Trump. I do believe that. Oz, not so much. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, download the podcast. You can get that at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, share, comment, like, all of that, and give us a 5-star rating. Great stuff.
Today's State of the Climate Report is a dismal litany of humanity's failure to tackle climate disruption.
UN warns 4 key climate change indicators broke new records in 2021. Cutting air pollution from fossil fuels would save 50,000 lives a year, study finds. Plus,
forest officials are concerned that with the dry conditions, visitors may become trapped if a fire does break out.
National forests forced to close as wildfires rage.
All of that raging and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and Snarky comment.
And you know what those liberals will do with their powerful permanent majority? Beg Joe Manchin for paid family leave. Then when he doesn't vote for it, say, oh, okay then, what if we fed coal directly to dolphins?
Yep, that'll do it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, not a good sign for these wildfires this season.
No, it is not. Due to an outbreak of severe early season wildfires in New Mexico and southern Colorado, federal officials announced this week that the Santa Fe National Forest, as well as 2 other national forests, will close in the height of tourist season because the danger of a catastrophic fire is just too great. Globally, 4 key climate change indicators set new records in 2021. The United Nations Weather Agency announced on Wednesday greenhouse gas emissions, sea level rise, ocean heat, and ocean acidification, all critical climate indicators, reached new levels in 2021, all clear signs of humanity's impact on the planet. That's according to the UN World Meteorological Organization's annual State of the Global Climate Report out this week. The report warned that extreme weather disasters wreaked a heavy toll on human lives and cost hundreds of billions of dollars in economic losses last year. It confirmed that the past 7 years have been the hottest on record since the 1880s. Global sea levels reached a new record high, rising at double the previous rate. Ocean heat also hit a new record high. And because the oceans absorb about a quarter of humanity's rising carbon emissions, the report also found that oceans are now more acidic than they've been in at least 26,000 years, harming marine life.
That's a whole lot of not very good news.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged governments to move faster to end the use of polluting fossil fuels that are causing the climate crisis.
The global energy system is broken and bringing us ever closer to climate catastrophe. Fossil fuels are a dead end, environmentally and economically. The only sustainable future is a renewable one. The good news is that the lifeline is right in front of us. Renewable energy technologies such as wind and solar are readily available and in most cases cheaper than coal and other fossil fuels. If we act together, the renewable energy transformation can be the peace project of the 21st century.
It's that if we act together part that I'm kind of worried about.
Yeah. Another clear sign of humanity's impact on the planet, a new study by the Lancet Planetary Health Journal shows that pollution of all types continues to be the largest environmental health threat around the world. Air pollution, water pollution, and toxic chemical pollution were responsible for about 1 out of every 6 deaths globally between 2015 and 2019. The death toll attributed to dirty pollution has risen 55% since the year 2000, the study found. The vast majority of deaths from pollution were in developing countries.
On the upside, think of all those billionaires who are making billions and billions of dollars from it.
A different study finds that cutting air pollution from fossil fuels in the United States alone would save 50,000 lives every year. And cutting fossil fuel air pollution would also provide economic benefits, saving more than $600 billion every year in public health costs.
Yeah, but not for those billionaires.
And not for the 17 Republican state attorneys general who are now suing the Environmental Protection Agency over its decision to restore a waiver allowing California to set tougher tailpipe emission standards than the federal government. California's tailpipe emissions laws have improved mileage standards and air quality for residents nationwide. But some good news.
Thank you.
Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire former mayor of New York City, announced he is launching a $240 million new initiative to deploy clean energy in 10 developing countries to combat climate change, working with nonprofit organizations to develop plans with local and national governments.
Okay, I take back some of what I said about those billionaires, at least this one. At least in this one short moment.
In a statement, Bloomberg noted that more than 750 million people around the world lack access to electricity, saying, quote, "We have a unique opportunity to drive that energy source being renewable from the start, instead of going back again in another 30 years.
So there's that.
Are you tired tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I love the fact that Nebraska Republican Representative Don Bacon, not someone you would consider, a hippie, fancy pants liberal, not very happy with my state representative, Scott Perry. Now remember, Scott Perry, my representative, is the guy. Not fond of them, oddly enough. I don't want him as my representative. But, a guy who refuses to testify to the January 6th commission. Someone who I have a lot of questions for on what he was doing on January 6th and the run-up to. But Don Bacon, a Republican from Nebraska, has put him in the Scott Perry and Chip Roy in the Troublemakers Caucus. Evidently, these two not very popular with other Republicans because they have forced roll call votes on even the most mundane of votes. And understand, the intent of this is to slow the process down, to stop anything from happening, and to cause procedural chaos. Again, this is who these people are. It's not about governing. It's not about getting things done. It's certainly not about making your life better. It's about chaos. And that should make people angry. I know it's making Don Bacon angry because for a Republican to come out and talk about other Republicans and put them in the Troublemakers Caucus, I find that interesting. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on Scott Perry, hopefully going to be the person who sends him home in November, so I no longer have to be disgraced by having someone who's possibly an insurrectionist as my representative in Congress. I've asked Shemaine Daniels to come talk with us. She won the primary here in Pennsylvania and has the right to take on Scott Perry in November. And I'm hoping folks will check out her website, danielsforcongress.org. Shemaine, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me on, Rick.
Let's start right at the beginning. Congrats on the primary victory. You first hurdle done. Now the tough stuff.
Yes, now is the real hard work. Now is the time to drum up Democratic votes, bring independents in, bring moderate Republicans in. And just getting people to come out to vote. That's the big thing in November.
So what do you think about the Troublemaker Caucus? What do you think of I'm not surprised by it. I'm not surprised that Scott Perry is so abrasive that even his own colleagues are like, no, bad.
Well, I think it used to be that whether you were a Democrat or a Republican, you were running for office to fix problems in your state and your community, based on your philosophy. But, someone like Scott Perry, he's just been lazy. He hasn't done any work. All he has done is, he is like the troublemaker in high school, right? The kid who sits in the back and distracts the other students from instruction, doesn't turn in homework, has nothing better to do but to just waste people's time. And that's what he's been doing during his time as. And
you bring up an excellent point, because I have talked to voters recently and I go, what has he actually done? What, because it used to be, representatives were based on what the bacon they brought home. Right. What have you done? What bridges, what libraries, what buildings, what schools, what healthcare facilities? What have you brought back to the district? What have you done for the district? What ribbon cuttings have you done? Because that used to be the bellwether of your tenure, and I'm struggling to find what it is that he's made better for this district. I know a lot of people love he puts a thumb in people's eyes. Okay, if that's your litmus test for a good representative, it's not mine.
Right. And he hasn't done anything. I mean, as anti-immigrant as he is, he hasn't introduced any anti-immigrant bills. He can't even work on the things he supposedly believes in. He's just unproductive. He doesn't work. So I'm not surprised his Republican peers who actually want to put some effort into, dealing with issues.
It's interesting you bring that up. It's interesting because I had him on the program a number of years ago when he was a state representative, when he introduced the legislation that destroyed our unemployment system here. He's the one who was behind really screwing up our unemployment. In fact, he screwed it up so bad that employers were going, please fix it. Please do something because it's bad. It's so bad that employers, conservative employers, were going, please fix what you've screwed up. And I remember at the time asking him if it was his legislation or if it was model legislation from an organization like ALEC. And I still question whether he did it himself, did his own homework, or he had someone else do it. So it's interesting that you brought that up.
Well, his first comments about me are national talking points. And I'm just like, I'm an elected official within your district. Like, if you don't have something to say about me and you depend on national talking points, like, why are you even in office?
Because I like the title and it's $175,000 a year.
I guess that's yeah.
So let me ask you this, because, I do talk to people all the time, and there are problems in this district. Families are struggling. We've got healthcare issues. We've got education issues. We've got infrastructure issues. Last time we talked, we talked about Harrisburg, which I joked was at one point the sinkhole capital of the world as I know it. There's a lot that needs to be done, and yet we've got a representative here who doesn't seem interested in that. What are you going to do that's different from what he has not done?
Well, show up to work.
Have an idea? Okay, there's a start.
My main issues I've mentioned before: infrastructure, women and family issues, and fixing our immigration system. And there's some things that you could start out relatively quickly with. We already had the major infrastructure package. We need some more investments in that realm because we really have divested from infrastructure over many years now, and we're playing catch up. On women's issues, we need pro-choice candidates in November, no matter what. I've been a staunch advocate for women's rights for a very long time. And, you see the struggles that women experience and by extension, their families, right? So paid maternity leave, raising our minimum wage applies to everyone across the board. All of those kind of things that support women and families. And, obviously our immigration system really needs there's so many issues with it, but we can start off by staffing the agency that's, designated to address immigration questions, because it's part of the big problem is understaffed. And it's funny that you mentioned the whole thing about the unemployment system, because in 2017, I was getting so many calls from employers about our immigration system. And I don't do employment immigration. But for the first time, there were people who were just really pissed because they really couldn't run their businesses with how messed up the system was.
Yeah, well, our system is messed up, and I don't have an answer. And this is one of those things where, there's thoughts all over the map, but I don't know that there is an answer. There are some who want to slam the door shut. There are some who want to swing the door wide open. There are some who want, we can pay percentages, this, that. Is there an answer to this?
Well, the system was designed to not have an answer, because the system is designed to be the kind of the weak link in every other system, right? So if you want to have a disempowered workforce, you have a system that makes sure that workers who come in through our immigration system are disempowered, right? And they can be the weak link in worker rights, in a worker right context, right? If the thing you care about is disempowering, let's say, victims of domestic violence, you're going to, or if you want maybe I should say in the reverse. If you want to empower people who are abusers, you create a whole class of people who depend on them entirely for employment, for income and housing, so that when they are abusers, the victims have nowhere to turn to, right? And then you weaken that whole system. You weaken the system that's there to address things like domestic violence, right? So the immigration system doesn't have one answer because it is a stand-in for many, 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 many issues.
Right.
If you want to, one of the reasons Chris Kobach really became anti-illegal alien guy is because they really want to weaken our education system. That's the target. Because if you undo Plier, you undo the legal infrastructure that exists that allows for public education.
Explain that because I'm not getting the connection.
Because Plier is the California Supreme Court the Supreme Court decision came out of the California education system that said you couldn't deny if a state offers public education, you can't deny a non-documented child from accessing public education because public education is a fundamental right if it's offered by the state. And so that has been public education has been one of the things that the far right really hates because, public education is what causes all of the things that the far right hates, right? People of different races mixing with each other, people of different classes mixing with each other, people of different genders mixing with each other. So what they've been trying to do is find ways to weaken that Supreme Court decision so that public education is no longer a fundamental right, and then they could have their little oasis of whiteness and wealth and and toxic masculinity, right? So that's one of the fundamental rights that the far right. So when you see a lot of the anti-immigration challenges, they always have this component of trying to cut away at reducing the people who can say they have fundamental rights.
Right, and it's about pushing people back into the shadows. And part of my problem with the current infrastructure system that we have, the kind of broken system we have, is it keeps people desperate and in the shadows. And as a working person who believes that all workers should have rights, I understand that that's a system that pulls us all down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have an answer to what we do to the problem, and I have people say, "Well, this is all Obama's fault." I'm going, no, this was well before Obama. This was you can go back to Nixon. This was Nixon. This was Ford. This was Carter. Because ultimately, Reagan gave amnesty to 3,000 undocumented people when he was president, and then George H.W. Bush it continued under him because they didn't fix it, and then Clinton, and then then W, and then Obama, and then Trump. We have a long-standing problem, and it's going to get worse. Because, there's so many other desperate nations. If you're not solving problems around the globe, you're going to have desperation at your doorstep. That's also part of the problem.
Yeah, there's desperation at the doorstep, but we also have to kind of accept to some degree like our own complicity in that process, right? We still, we want cheap stuff all the time, and we want a cheap disempowered workforce all the time, so that they can produce a ton of cheap stuff.
This is where we start by making laws to empower workers here.
Exactly, because and the far right has been doing this double-edged talk about it's the undocumented worker that's the problem. In the meantime, over the years, what they've done is made it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper for employers to hire undocumented workers, right? Because they want to encourage businesses that exploit workers. They don't want good businesses, right? This is the other thing. Quite a few of the complaints I get when I get employers complaining about an undocumented workforce is the business that's trying to compete by following the rules, who has to compete with a worker who's employing, because the employer who's hiring someone who's undocumented is also probably not paying taxes, is also probably not complying with zoning laws, is also probably not complying with environmental waste disposal rules. So there's a whole host of there's a whole ecosystem of regulatory infrastructure that employer is benefiting from by not having to comply with it. So, if you're an employer and most of your workforce is undocumented, you could be violating a ton of OSHA regulations, and nobody's going to know until the worker dies.
And even then, sadly.
And even then, yeah. So there's just a lot. And like I said, the immigration system doesn't have one answer, because it is a system, and it connects with every other system that we have.
And it's broken on purpose, because it gives everybody some bit of cover, and it gives the Republicans the ability to beat up on the Democrats whenever they want, and to use desperation as a divisive tool. And it's where we are. So last question I've got for you, clearly this is going to be a long campaign.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the women's issue for a second, because I see that as center to this campaign, and the idea that look, we're undoing the progress of the 20th century quickly with what's happening in the Supreme Court, and you look at what a lot of on the right is being pushed. This should be front and center. Is this something that you're focusing on or looking at focusing on over the next several months?
Absolutely. I mean, we have. I've never thought I would live to see the day that we would even be considering overturning Roe. For me, that was settled law. It's been settled law for, a half a century. And it's just so, it's the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced. But yeah, women's rights in a whole host of things will be at the center of the campaign, because they are under attack. And it seems to not, the Republicans have just really lost their sanity when it comes to women's issues on a whole host of things, and I just don't see them being able to resonate with most women or men who have women in their lives and women they respect in their lives. So I'm hoping that will be one of the things that drums up voter turnout in November. But yeah, reproductive rights, women's rights is going to be a big deal, because, once you start saying that the government has the ability to regulate very private decisions, it's really easy for it to expand further into the days when you needed your husband or father or brother to sign, your credit card application.
It's always going to be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You are so right. But Shemaine, I appreciate you taking some time for us. I wish you the best, and I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts with us down the road.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, Shemaine Daniels. Make sure you check out her work. Danielsforcongress.org. She's running for Congress in the 10th Congressional District here in Pennsylvania. Again, Danielsforcongress.org. We'll get links out. You can check that out. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Make sure you check out the podcast. Never miss an episode. Never miss a second. Subscribe, share, like, comment, all of that stuff. Back after this. think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Supreme Court, a unanimous decision. Unanimous. Shocking. And on wage theft, nonetheless. A former Taco Bell worker, her name Robin Morgan, filed a lawsuit back in 2018. What year is this? 2022, 4 years in the making. Evidently, she claims that, and what this lawsuit was over, is that her and her coworkers, and lots of them across the country, were told to punch out, work off the clock, so that the franchise owners didn't have to pay overtime. Yeah, you heard me say that, right? And this happens all the time. Wage theft rampant in this country. In fact, I forget the organization who did it, but they said that, add up all of the stick 'em up kind of things, the bank robberies, the gas station robberies, all the things, all the robberies, add them all up. And wage theft is like 3.5 times more than all of the things that we see on the evening news. Just an outrageous sum. And according to this, her and workers at approximately 150 other franchise locations across the country were cheated out of payments, and they were seeking to get paid for their time, demanding it. Well, they were told, sorry, you can't sue. You can't file a class action lawsuit because you had to, go through private mandatory arbitration. This is interesting to me, because what this is saying is that at the time, they were trying to push them towards arbitration. They had filed a lawsuit. If I'm getting this right, and we're going to look deeper into this, but the binding arbitration that the Supreme Court ruled was perfectly constitutional. Evidently, isn't as sacrosanct as I thought. They're saying that she didn't waive her rights to the court. She's arguing that arbitration clauses, should be treated the same as lawsuits. There's some interesting parts of this that I'm not a lawyer, but what Kagan had put into place is she said that, federal law doesn't privilege arbitration over litigation, or the other way around. She said that federal policy is about treating arbitration contracts like all others, not fostering arbitration. So, this is kind of important because, and to this point, all of this forcing people into these arbitration agreements was kind of an end run for corporate America to getting sued. This unanimous decision, I don't know where this is going to take us, but kind of a good thing, I think. This was a win for workers. I'm going to have to get my labor attorney friends here to come and give much more depth. But just in reading some of the decision out of this today, I don't know when the 6-3 conservative pro-business Supreme Court, maybe it was a bad day, but to see a 9-0 decision in favor of a worker just kind of stopped me in my tracks. I need to know more. So if there's a labor lawyer out there, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2003. That was the day that the U.S. Senate approved more than $300 billion in tax cuts over the next decade. The cuts barely passed. Vice President Dick Cheney cast the deciding vote 51-50. Starting in 2001, President George W. Bush proposed and pushed for a series of drastic tax cuts. The administration promised the changes would help to create jobs and grow the economy, but the results fell far short of that goal. 10 years after the massive tax cuts, the Washington Post ran a story analyzing their impact. The article stated, quote, "By any measure, the Bush tax cuts have benefited the wealthy more than the middle class. The top 20% of earners received 73% of the tax relief. The bottom 20% only received 1%. Coupled with spending on wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the tax cuts sent the national debt soaring. And those promised jobs, they never materialized. 2001 to 2007 marked the worst period of job growth since the 1950s. Then, in 2008, the recession wiped out 8 million jobs. Many of the Bush tax cuts were designed to sunset or expire after so many years. Yet, when it came time for the cuts to end in 2010, Republicans in Congress fought to keep them going. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka declared, "It is absolutely insane that in these tough economic times, some people want to continue George W. Bush's tax giveaways to millionaires. Working families are losing their jobs, their benefits, and their homes. They are the ones who need help." The Bush tax cuts finally expired in 2013, although new legislation repackaged and continued many of them. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I never dreamed of growing up to be a political activist commentator, but here I am, and it worked out pretty well for me. I've been lucky enough to have a voice in public matters and eke out a modest living running my mouth as an independent populist agitator. Still, I have to confess to the sin of job envy. Not in the sense of being resentful, but regretful about my own inability to lift the trade of journalistic commentary to the heights attained by a small, feisty collection of unique public opinionators, political cartoonists. In framing issues and rallying people to think and act, these journalists have an unfair advantage over us mere word crafters. They can literally draw a picture to make their point. They reach masses viscerally as well as cerebrally, and visceral usually outpunches cerebral. Editorial cartooning is a profession made up largely of progressive mavericks who enter the social, political, cultural fray with an abundance of anti-establishment audacity, an eye for irony, fondness for the underdog, and an ability to laugh at absurdity, plus artistic talent. Because cartooning is an expression of the human spirit that's been irrepressible since cave drawings, generation after generation of pen and ink champions of democracy blossomed. The general public's appreciation and demand for the cartoonist's unblinking honesty and satire have never flagged, even increasing whenever the artists come under public assault by autocrats, plutocrats, screwballs, and assorted other censors. These graphic editorial artists matter. Again and again, they've roused the public to rise up and put down corporate and political scoundrels, incrementally advancing our nation's democratic possibilities. As in the natural world, though, even the most beneficial creatures can be driven to extinction. This is Jim Hightower saying, check your own local newspaper. Are your favorite cartoonists still there?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Tuesday, primary states. This is the great thing about this time of the year. A number of primaries coming around. Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Minnesota, Texas. Primary day. Arkansas, evidently, what's her name? Huckleberry Sanders running for governor. Not really a challenge. I guess she's got a token challenge. Running as the Republican for governor there. I'm going to be watching Georgia. I think all eyes are going to be on Georgia tomorrow because you've got the governor's race. You've got the Secretary of State race with Raffensperger. Will that person get taken out? Marjorie Taylor Greene, going to see what happens there. Even on the Democratic side, there's some interest. You've got a fairly progressive candidate and a blue dog. Going to be interesting to see who comes out. But for me, the Georgia race, the one I'm looking most forwardly at, you're going to have Herschel Walker. Is he really going to be the guy who's going to be the nominee there for November for Senate? With all of the things, all of the stumbles, all of the made-up stuff, all of the memory lapses. And I'm not going to say he's lying. I'm going to say they're memory lapses. Because if anybody's suffering from CTE, I got to think it's Herschel Walker. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on primary day and whatever else we can bang around. I've asked our good friend Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob's a former congressman from Ohio and political analyst and one of the smartest guys I know. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
You don't know too many people, do you? I thought you knew a lot of people. Okay.
No, quite often, man, you're spot on things. So what are you expecting?
I try.
What are you expecting tomorrow?
Yeah, sometimes by accident, sometimes I get lucky, and sometimes on purpose.
You've got the magic dartboard, I know. What are we expecting in Georgia tomorrow?
Well, I think Herschel Walker. Let's start with that. I think it's really quite interesting because when this all started, Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, was not happy. He was very upset. He was nervous about Herschel Walker. Stories about his quite interesting past, let's say that. And they were afraid that this would just create one huge explosion. And what's interesting about this race is that, of course, former Georgia Senator Dave Perdue and Kelly Loeffler should consider running. Then McConnell got a lot of information from other people, including this personal meeting with Walker and McConnell. And then all of a sudden, you have Herschel Walker, which is kind of bringing the conservatives together, I guess you could say. And I think that in itself was, a shocker. But look, this primary for him is, what is it? He skipped some debates. Nobody could really nail him down where he was at on policy, right?
Right.
He took the safe spots. He was the quote conservative in the media, so that does it. He's got probably what 68% of the support probably, So he's going to have his big victory in Tuesday's primary, but the scrutiny from that point on, Rick, is going to intensify quite a lot.
Yeah, but none of the other people I think anyone you've never heard of. None of them have name recognition. Gary Black, Josh Clark, Kelvin King, Jonathan Malcolm, Latham Sadler. Not the name recognition of a Herschel Walker. When you start dividing things down, I think Walker's going to have that advantage of there's energy, there's name recognition. No matter what he says. Doesn't matter.
Well, and I know you're right on that, but I'm looking at it from the end that it will become, if focused, if an unknown can get some traction, some money behind them, some interest groups behind them, and then it becomes something that the media says, oh wow, here's some stories, here we go. Then you're going to be able to capture some interest. But I agree overall. This should have divided the Republican Party, and it was one of those gifts that it simply didn't.
Now, does he take out Raphael Warnock in November?
Well, I don't know because, again, I think if there's enough scrutiny in this process that the media will focus, and like anything, if enough time and money is put behind, the effort to scrutinize him, then I think it could be a different ballgame.
Again, an interesting time.
Look, Trump is on a score settling. This is the other thing. He is on, and I think it's going to make a very interesting November. Now, I understand everybody's looking at the primaries. Your home state, we still got the whole Oz thing. The other candidate, he entered a lawsuit, I think, today, didn't he?
Yeah.
McCormick.
Oh, that was predictable because of Friday's 3rd District ruling.
Now, remember, of course, as you know, it's your state. The Republicans like mail-in ballots now. In fact, you can, according to some of the lawsuit, it doesn't matter when you put a date on it or not. Now, that's different than when Trump ran.
Much different.
They needed to be stopped when Trump ran. But with this whole, revenge cycle by Trump in Georgia, I still think it will make for an interesting fall.
No, it is interesting. And what's interesting is you had, Trump and Mike Pence having dueling rallies down there. I guess, Pence is now coming out of the closet. Not out of the closet. Although we know.
Of sorts, yes.
Oops. Freudian
They
slip.
can put him in conversion therapy. Don't worry. He's from that state that they took.
Exactly. But he's now come out and said that he may run against Trump in 2020 for, whatever leads him, doing the whole evangelical, whatever God wants him to do thing. And, it made me think, I thought Trump was God's candidate. At least that's what I was told.
Well, I think what you're seeing here is, and I mean, some my friends tell me I'm crazy, but I don't think Trump will run. I don't think. I really don't. I don't think in the end he will run. That's just my guess. And that's why I think you're also starting to see some of these candidates like Pence to dare to say they might be interested, or DeSantis, of course, of Florida. So I think they're trying to keep themselves out there, alive is what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I suppose we'll see Wednesday.
Well, Georgia, though, it's personal for Trump. Look, Kemp and Raffensperger directly went against him in his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. But if you look what Kemp has done in Georgia, he's been successful in, saying, "Hey, I'm a conservative. I'm an honest conservative. Definitely, I am one." And he's undercutting Trump's, argument that he's not a loyal Republican. And he signed a gun law, open carry. He had look at their severe abortion law, what they're doing. They had a measure to ban transgender students. I mean, Kemp became the Republican, of the year. Now, if he does win, which Trump wants to cut him out, but then he's going to head off to a big face-off with Stacey Abrams, and that will be something,
Yeah, interesting. This is again why elections have consequences and why people need to vote. Want to get your thoughts on the president. Interesting last couple of days. We've launched a new Indo-Pacific trade deal. This seems a lot like the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement without any real commitment.
Right. I have never seen a free trade agreement that I didn't want to kill. From Captain, down the line, I don't like free trade agreements. I look at this one, and I'm a hawk on it. I did press conferences with Bernie Sanders. We fought all of them. But on this one, it's a little different. I think this is more of a cooperative effort. I don't see it leading to, we're all going to, 20 of us sit down and sign this new free trade agreement between our countries. I think this is a smart move by the president, and he's not going to get bad reaction off of this, that he's trying to do, trade bills. This is a sort of a bind together. You've got India included in here. You've got different, countries. You've got, of course, Japan and, countries throughout Asia. And I think this is sort of more or less a counter to China saying, we're looking at definite economic interests we all have. So I don't look at this as a, Central America Free Trade Agreement where we're combining with Central America countries. I think this one is putting together, some ideas and some goals to counter what's going on with the pandemic and different economic problems we all have within, inflation around the world, et cetera. I view it more like that, and a little bit more in China's face is the way I look at this one.
Yeah, well, in China's face, we most certainly were, as the president.
Well,
kind of,
oh, yeah.
was this do you think this was a gaffe? Do you think this was planned? Do you think it just came out? Because this has not been the position of the U.S. for a very long time, that we'll intervene militarily if China invades Taiwan. Not since Eisenhower sent the Pacific Fleet to the South China Sea back in the 50s. But the president has said we'll intervene militarily if China invades Taiwan.
This is probably, I would say, one of the most aggressive, forceful statements on Taiwan that we have seen in decades out of any White House. Look, there's always been support for Taiwan by a lot of members of Congress and by the presidents. But we also kind of do that dance, because of China, and, we support it, but we don't always send certain high-level people to meet with the Taiwanese. President just came right out, and I believe this is as a result of the Ukraine and Russia, because I have always thought since the Ukraine began that China had to be sitting there watching, how are they going to handle this? Is this going to do we have a little bit of an exercise we look at here of how we can go take Taiwan? Let's see how the world handles this entire deal. And I think that's why the president has it shocked me, but this is why I think he came out and did this, because strictly of what Putin is doing in Ukraine, and the president doesn't want China to get any ideas of Putin can do this and the world does some things. I think the president's made a very strong statement, shocking statement, but he should make, I think, a lot of the pro-Taiwanese supporters in Congress quite happy.
Yeah, I mean, it was most certainly a statement, and the right wing went crazy. I mean, Biden gaffe machine, threatens war and all kinds of stuff. And I'm going. But
they love this. This is what they want Taiwan to be supported. They tried to get Republican presidents to do this. Now that he did it, they've got to think, oh, wait a minute. He did that. Wait, we've got to pick something apart.
Yeah, no, excellent point. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Bob Ney, political analyst, former Ohio congressman. Look, this is one of these moments where you're right. Finally someone has said it. But is this at a moment when, because you're seeing reports that look, our inflation rates are high, but look, our economically we're not doing horribly. China's got some struggles. They got some struggles. Reports coming out. They've got some struggles of how they're going to feed themselves. They've got some real problems around the globe. There are some real problems. If you listen to a lot of conservative pundits, we're the only ones that are struggling, and yet you look around the rest of the world. I don't know. Our problems don't look so bad in comparison.
I just returned, as you know, Rick, from India a month ago. The average Indian worker makes $216 a month. Their gas at the time I was there was $5.77 a gallon. You make $216 a month. Start to figure that out. They didn't have a stimulus package over there. They didn't have unemployment. They don't have housing assistance. I mean, it's truly remarkable that they're surviving at all. So inflation has just, ripped them apart. I mean, I've just picked one country. Now, I understand to us, this is, it's a lot, the gasoline and the inflation and the prices in food, and et cetera. But when you put it in the perspective of the globe, I mean, there are places going down the tubes around the world through this whole global inflation cycle. And I just used India as one example, 1.4 billion people.
Yeah, I was just reading something, that China, they're not sure how they're going to feed all their people.
Right. I think China is in a sort of a panic. I mean, it did this total shutdown, that they won't have one single case of COVID. But I think China's going through a transition too. They have this hybrid communist capitalistic system. It is a hybrid. They've created this middle class, and then you've got the Chinese oligarchs, the super wealth, and then you've got the super poor, and it's all a blend over there. And along comes this pandemic, and China reacts in a pretty stern way, and now they're going to be in problems of how they're going to do exactly what you said, how they're going to to feed their people. And anytime you've got a population, I don't care how authoritarian you are or strong-arm type of government, anytime you've got a population of like 1.5 billion people, you've got to be careful. They get angry in mass sometimes.
Yeah. They tend to rise up and demand stuff.
Like fair wages, hopefully.
Yeah, like not like not the 996 plan that Elon Musk was raving about. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. That work schedule that for poverty wages that Elon was so enamored by. Yeah,
right.
That.
Right.
Finally, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Operation Fly formula, the airlift of baby formula into the country. Headlines all across the wire. Baby formula here, Operation Formula arrives, formula from Europe to Indiana. All did not see capitalist country bailed out by socialist nations. Didn't see that headline anywhere.
No, we didn't, did we? They had the other airlift. Well, there's another airlift actually coming about, I think. Of course, the president invoked the Defense Production Act, but it was amazing to see the fly-in of the baby formula. It really, really was. And of course, the shortage has been now traced back to a recall. There was a recall by I think it was Abbott Nutrition, and in Ohio, in Heath, Ohio, which is near Newark, near Columbus, Ohio. The baby factory over here is booming. It's all organic. Everything to do with babies is organic, so that's booming. So maybe there will be some others that'll, foster maybe some new business. But I thought it was amazing to see this whole airlift.
Yeah, but again, I view it as a failure of our system to deal with this problem, and for there to be enough other companies to absorb the production and ramp up in those moments. Because again, I go back to what I said at the start. I was told, you have all these other companies competing, so that when one goes down, the rest of them rush in to maximize their production, to steal the market share. And when you got 4 companies that control 90% of the market, and the biggest one goes down, there's a problem. There's a problem.
You're right. There are lessons to be learned if we pursue all this, just like right now with manufacturers of pharmaceuticals who are saying, well, that's not profitable. I've got to switch the line now. And all of a sudden, cancer medication for children is not out there anymore. Children are going to die. And at some point in time, the government is going to have to step into this process when it comes to something that keeps people alive, like baby formula and cancer medicine.
Socialism.
They've got to step in. Yeah.
It's crazy stuff, Bob. But I appreciate the time. As always, keep up the great work.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Naya. Seriously, you think of this stuff. The fact drives me nuts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Share your thoughts that way. Also, if you miss any of the program, grab the podcast. Got to take a quick break. Right back after this to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So a new report out by this group called Traffic 21. They are a transportation research institute at Carnegie Mellon University. And they found, shocker of all shockers, that skilled human transit workers, people, you, me, skilled transit workers still needed to supervise, manage, and maintain vehicles to ensure safety with the autonomous vehicles. Now remember, we're being told that the future is going to be all machines. We're told, I'm in the trucking industry, been in the trucking industry over 30 years, and all this time, when they're self-driving trucks, you'll be out of a job. And I've always said, the beginning of it is going to be, someone have to go clean up all the messes when they wreck. Someone's going to have to, go and fix them when they break down. Someone's going to have to go do all the stuff of, when they get lost, finding them. Because no technology is perfect. You still need critical thinking skills. You still need, people. You still need, the people who program the computers. This report goes through and confirms that. And this is one of those things where you go, I love these studies that they do that you go, yeah, that was common sense. Now they say, look, even with the safety enhanced technologies in place, there is a need for people. There's a need for operators on board to scan the latent hazards and the threats to safety that aren't immediately visible to the system or the driver, but that may predict an experienced driver. And I say this all the time. There are things a computer can't do that a person can, especially when you're driving. The reason that the automated vehicles don't work in most areas, they can't make a left-hand turn in traffic because we're imperfect. Computers don't understand that. Computers don't understand that people are going to turn left in front of you for no freaking reason whatsoever. They haven't figured that out yet. And they're never going to, because computers don't think illogically. Only humans go, yeah, I can see that guy over there. Yep, I'll bet you he's going to turn left in front of me. And there he did it. Anybody who's been in traffic realizes there's somebody in a hurry. And you could tell by them driving erratically, their movements. There are other cues that a computer's never going to pick up on. So I see this study from Carnegie Mellon, and I'm going, yep, it's good that smart people are realizing that, we human people are important. Because I have some friends who believe that we can, we don't need people to do things. We can have computers do everything. And I'm going, well, then how are you going to have an economy? Because who's going to do what work? What are you going to do for work? And this is why I come back to my original thought. We need to be moving in a direction where when these technologies come online, that they are costly enough to ensure that people who lose their jobs from them are made whole. That we don't allow the profits from these to be in the hands of only a few. That the productivity gains, as in the past, have been hoarded at the top. Those need to be widely shared, broadly shared across an economy. And this is why we have to talk about what kind of an economy do we as workers, as Americans, what kind of an economy do we want to have? And what's the point of an economy? Is it solely about producing goods and services? Is it solely about profit for the wealth class? Is it solely about jobs for workers? What is the point? Is it a mix of all of that? And to whose benefit? And how do you make policy to ensure that we get to those places? Because look, we're trying the invisible hand stuff, and we've created a new billionaire every 30 hours during the pandemic, while millions of people are in poverty, and millions more are falling into extreme poverty every day. It's a problem. There's a problem. But solutions are just policies away. At least that's my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Love to hear it. Also, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss an episode. Download wherever you get your podcast, or just go to thericksmithshow.com and do that. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people